case where you have 30 days worth of testimony, what I've always found, no matter how complex the trial is, you always find one or two or three issues to break the whole thing down and dumb it down for yourself and just say that, look, if this is true, then guilty. If this is not true, then I cannot find guilty. For me, where I have planted my flag in the sand with respect to all of this is, what were the medical injuries? Was there evidence that the brake lights were manipulated? Is there evidence of a before and after, before the incident occurred and after the incident occurred, so I could determine whether or not the brake light was responsible for O'Keefe's death? And those were answered. There's some questions that haven't been answered. There's a lot of questions that don't make sense. A lot of the testimony from the officers has been oddly vexing, including statements that were identified in testimony where the officers were like, oh, I guess the homeowner's going to take a lot of shit for this one, huh? And the reply was, no, he'll be fine. He's a Boston cop, or something to that effect. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. So, you know, we're in a day 4. Is it day 4 now of deliberation? Day 5 of deliberation? I would not be all that concerned about a hung jury just yet, just because there's been 31 days of testimony. Here's what I know about juries. They are either extremely efficient and have made their minds up very quickly, or you get some people in the jury that when they're deliberating, they literally want to go through every single piece of evidence one more time. There's even some juries that they won't even take polls until after they've gone through all of the evidence one more time. And in a case where you've literally had, we've been in trial now for 2 months, there was, I think, over 80 witnesses or something like that. It's going to take them a little bit of time to get through it. I'm not so sure in a trial of this length that you can read too much into the fact that they're still deliberating. They have that right. I had speculated the other day that I thought that first degree was off the table. They just did not prove that with any measure of certainty. There's certain things. Here's what I look at the most. Here's what impressed me the most in this case. Oftentimes, we are forced to litigate these cases without perfect facts. For example, when you have a breach of contract case, nobody wrote anything down, so it was literally a verbal contract. So how could you prove then that there was a contract? Well, you can prove that there was a contract by the actions of the parties involved. If you didn't have a contract, then why were you paying him on an installment basis for the last 18 months, a fixed amount of dollars, and receiving a certain amount of services? So you could fill in the gaps, even when things aren't written down. And if I'm filling in the gaps in this case, I got to say, the Styles is a study in contrast. I mean, you go back to the presidential debates from 1960, when you had JFK going up against Richard Nixon, and JFK was this young, vibrant guy in the sharp suit, good-looking guy, something that, you know, and TV was relatively new. It was literally a new thing. I think it hadn't even really been widespread in existence for even, 12 to 15 years at that point. The first television broadcast, I think, being in 1939, imagine. Of course, movies were a thing, but as far as television sets being inside of your homes, that was not really a thing until the 50s. They had technology in the 40s, but it was expensive and clunky. And so in 1960s, it's really the first time you had on display two presidential candidates where you're getting to see in real time, as if they were sitting in your living room, the difference between one candidate or the other and how they presented. You got to gauge a brand new variable, which was never the case before unless you were sitting physically in front of the parties as they debated presidential issues. You got to see the very first time the differences in personality and temperament and speech patterns, and whether or not you had confidence in them as speakers or not. And JFK, like I said, vibrant, charismatic, good looking, killed it. And then Richard Nixon in this frumpy looking suit that he picked up at the Men's Warehouse. I don't know if they were in existence, but it was this frumpy looking, boxy looking suit. He looked like an old man, and he wasn't even that old. He wasn't even that much older than JFK, but his answers were less confident, even if he really believed in what he was saying. And after that debate was done, the general public shifted dramatically towards JFK. So if all you were doing was paying attention to the closing arguments in this case, it's really easy to get caught up in Alan Jackson's charisma and believe him when he tells you that this was an effing cover up and done it. You have officers going through her physical phone as opposed to a mirror of the phone, a download of the phone, a recreation of the phone data, because at that point, it's really important when you have electronic evidence like that, you're not supposed to, there's things on there that may be privileged. And so when you have a phone that's sitting there in evidence, it's supposed to be forensically copied and mirrored for everybody to go through, so that if there is redactable stuff in there that might be inadmissible, such as attorney-client privilege stuff or otherwise, it doesn't make it in to evidence. The other side, even if it's not admitted as evidence into the court, is not allowed to be privy to the conversations that you have with your attorney. And this effing guy is just going through her phone, no mirror, just her actual physical phone, looking for nudes of her, of which he didn't find any. He found a lot of other stuff, but he didn't find that. Hey, so you remember when we had covered this case way back before we even started trial? I think going into the first week of testimony. What was some of the main, what did you need to see to determine guilt or innocence of Karen Reed, whether or not she ran over John with her car?
I remember mentioning DNA, either DNA from the alleged dog bites or DNA on the car from I can't remember his name, from the guy that passed away. What else? I remember that we discussed also about the search of that other lady, how much it takes for a person to die from hypothermia. I don't know.
So I think we had boiled it
pretty
down to
much
like
what I remember.
Issues, right? Because there was literally three possible scenarios in this case. One of them was, all right, Karen Reed hit him on purpose. The other one was Karen Reed hit him on accident and doesn't know that she did it. The other one was that he was murdered by the people inside the house and they try to cover it up.
Yes.
And